Some battles are fought with fists, others with words. But the most brutal war of all is the one waged in silence, in the shadowed corridors of your own mind, where two giants clash, each claiming to hold the key to your soul. Freud, the architect of the unconscious, and Jung, the explorer of the collective, locked in an eternal duel for dominance over your thoughts, your fears, your very identity. Now imagine if you stopped obeying them both. If you stepped back and watched their conflict from a distance, what would you see? Who would you be without their voices in your head? That's where the truth lies, in the space between their theories, in the silence beyond their arguments. Where you are neither Freud's wounded child nor Jung's mystical seeker, but something far more terrifying, free. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Freud, in turn, saw the unconscious as a dark cellar filled with repressed desires and childhood traumas, pulling the strings of your adult life like a puppeteer. But what if neither of them was entirely right? What if the real war isn't between your conscious and unconscious, but between the stories they've forced you to believe about yourself? Think about it. Every time you label a dream as mere sexual symbolism, Freud, or an archetype of the collective, Jung, you're surrendering your own interpretation, handing over the keys to your psyche to someone else's theory. And in doing so, you've become a battlefield, a pawn in a philosophical war that's been raging for over a century. Now, consider this. When you stop identifying with Freud's ID or Jung's shadow, when you refuse to pathologize your desires or spiritualize your fears, who panics? Who scrambles to pull you back into their framework? It's not just the theorists. It's the part of you that's grown comfortable being explained, categorized, and controlled. The moment you withdraw from their narratives, you create a crisis, because without Freud, who will blame your mother? Without Jung, who will turn your pain into a hero's journey? You're left naked, face to face with the raw, untheorized truth of your own mind. And that is the most terrifying freedom of all. This speech isn't about choosing sides. It's about realizing that both Freud and Jung are voices in your head, voices you didn't choose, but inherited. Freud whispers that you're broken, that your past owns you. Jung murmurs that you're part of something grand, that your suffering is sacred. But what if you're neither? What if you're simply here, undefined, unclaimed, and utterly unknowable? That's the revelation that shatters the war, because when you stop feeding their theories with your compliance, their power over you weakens. You've been taught to dissect yourself, to dig for childhood wounds or search for mythical patterns. Since academia, since therapy, since the first time you Googled, "Why do I feel this way?" You've been conditioned to believe that your mind is a puzzle to be solved by someone else's map. But here's a truth no textbook will tell you. This obsession with interpretation is just another cage, and as long as you keep looking for answers in Freud's repression or Jung's synchronicity, you'll never meet the one thing that truly terrifies them both: your unfiltered, uninterpreted existence. Do you know why Freud feared the occult and Jung revered it? Because Freud needed the mind to be a closed system, a mechanical puzzle, while Jung longed for it to be a gateway to the divine. But what if the mind is neither? What if it's a mirror, reflecting whatever framework you hold up to it? The more you pathologize your thoughts, the more they'll play Freud's game. The more you mythologize them, the deeper you'll fall into Jung's labyrinth. But the day you drop both lenses, the day you stop seeing your mind as something to be deciphered, that's the day the war ends. Now, pause and ask yourself, who benefits from you believing Freud? Who gains when you adopt Jung's visions? Think of the therapists, the gurus, the self-help industry. Think of how many depend on you staying confused, searching, needing their keys to your own mind. Now imagine what happens when you take back the lock, when you stop translating your dreams and start living them, when you stop analyzing your shadows and start being them. That's when the tables turn. That's when you realize the war was never inside you. It was sold to you. Carl Jung warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Freud feared the same, because acceptance doesn't fit neatly into Oedipus complexes or individuation. It's messy, untheorized, beyond their grasp, and that's where your power lies, not in choosing between Freud and Jung, but in outgrowing them both. So I ask you now, how long will you let them narrate your inner world? How long will you force your life into their frameworks, twisting yourself to fit their theories? Maybe it's time to withdraw, to step out of the battlefield, to let their war rage on without you. Because when you stop feeding the conflict, something extraordinary happens. You meet the one thing they never accounted for. You, undiscovered, undefined, and finally, free. Like and subscribe if this resonates. The next part will go deeper into how Freud's repression and Jung's shadow are two sides of the same trap, and how to break free from both. There's a lie both Freud and Jung agreed on, that your mind is a place to dig, to decode, to work on, as if you're a project, as if you're not already whole. Freud's greatest fear wasn't the unconscious, it was meaninglessness. If the mind wasn't a puzzle of repressed traumas, then his life's work was just stories. So he dug into childhood, into sexuality, into the idea that every slip of the tongue was a clue. And in doing so, he gave you a script. You are your past, you are your wounds, you are what you've buried. But what if you're not? What if repression isn't a psychological truth, but a story? One that keeps you chained to the idea that you must unearth yourself to be whole. Jung, on the other hand, promised transcendence. His shadow wasn't just trauma, it was a cosmic drama, a hero's journey. But here's the catch. The moment you label a part of yourself as shadow, you've already split your soul in two. Light versus dark, accepted versus exiled. And now you're on a quest to integrate what you've been taught to see as separate. But what if the shadow doesn't exist? What if it's just another story, a way to keep you searching, striving, needing Jung's map? Think of the last time you called a feeling repressed or a dream archetypal. You weren't just describing an experience, you were filtering it through someone else's lens. And that's the trap. Freud and Jung didn't just study the mind, they colonized it. They gave you a language that replaces your own. So now the question isn't, do I follow Freud or Jung? It's, why do I feel the need to follow anyone at all? Freud taught you to excavate your past like an archaeologist, dusting off every memory for hidden meaning. Jung taught you to see your life as a myth, where every struggle is a symbol, every person an archetype. But what happens when you spend more time interpreting your life than living it? You become trapped in what the ancients called the vanity of knowledge, the illusion that to know something is to master it. Meanwhile, your actual experience slips through your fingers, labeled and filed away before you've even felt it. This is analysis paralysis, the endless loop of asking, what does this mean? Instead of, what is this? Freud's followers reduce love to attachment theory. Jung's disciples turn a simple coincidence into a sign. And you're left straddling two worlds, one foot in the therapist's office, the other in the mystic's temple, never quite landing in your own skin. But here's what neither Freud nor Jung admitted. Not everything means something. Some things just are. That nightmare? Maybe it's not a repressed memory or a shadow aspect. Maybe it's just bad pizza, that strange attraction to someone. Maybe it's not daddy issues or an anima projection. Maybe it's just chemistry. The moment you stop treating your mind like a riddle to be solved, you reclaim something radical, the right to not know. And that's where the real rebellion begins. Freud's couch and Jung's archetypes didn't just change psychology. They birthed an economy. Therapy sessions, dream journals, shadow work podcasts, trauma retreats, all promising the same thing. If you just dig deep enough, you'll find the real you. But what if the real you isn't buried? What if it's not hidden in a childhood memory or a collective unconscious? What if it's right here, untangled, uninterpreted, and utterly ordinary? Think about it. The more convinced you are that your mind is a puzzle, the more you'll pay for the pieces. Freudian analysts charge by the hour to help you regress. Jungian coaches offer expensive workshops to help you transcend. Meanwhile, the simplest truth goes unspoken. You are not a problem to be solved. This isn't to dismiss therapy or self-reflection, but to question the obsession with them. When does healing become a lifestyle? When does introspection become a prison? The answer lies in the most subversive question of all. What if I stopped trying to fix my mind and just lived in it?